The emergency klaxon tore through the silence of Commander Ilhan Voss's quarters, its shrill wail jolting him from his sleep. Instantly, his senses sharpened. The cold metal walls of the Earth Defense Station Yamama felt oppressive, the flickering red lights casting long, disorienting shadows. His breath hitched for just a second as he was hit with the unmistakable weight of urgency in the air. "Red alert, Commander!" A voice crackled over the intercom, but Voss was already moving. No need for further words. He swung his legs off the cot, the smooth surface of the metal floor chilling the soles of his boots. As his hands shot to his uniform, the hum of his own heartbeat seemed louder than the station's alarms. Time was precious now. He was dressed in seconds, a streak of movement more than the precision of thought, as his body fell into the well-worn motions of duty. His mind, however, was already racing. What had happened? A weapon malfunction? A system failure? Or something worse? The latter was the one that gnawed at his insides. The silence that followed the initial alert was deafening. His feet pounded down the narrow corridor of the station, the low rattle of the walls vibrating as the emergency lights flickered above him. His breath matched the rhythm of his steps, sharp, quick, urgent. "Report!" Voss barked as he burst into the command center. The night shift crew stood frozen, staring at the laser plasma display in front of them, their faces illuminated in eerie shades of blue. The tension in the room was thick. No one spoke, but their eyes conveyed the same wordless message. Something was wrong. One of the officers, Lieutenant Zorik Maros, turned slowly, his face pale, the corners of his lips pulled tight. "Commander, the readings are impossible." His voice was barely above a whisper. Voss didn't need more words. His eyes flicked to the massive heads-up display. A series of red dots pulsed at the far edge of Earth's defense perimeter, marking the presence of something too large for the system's filters to classify. "Zoom in," Voss commanded, stepping closer, his breath quickening despite his composed exterior. The display focused, and his jaw tightened as the size of the object came into view. A ship, enormous, far larger than any Earth vessel. The sensor readings flared across the screen, and his mind raced to process the data. Unfamiliar energy signatures, no warp traces, no jump traces, just a ship sitting at the edge of their space, like a predator lurking in the shadows. The ship's hull was black, irregular, as if it were both ancient and disturbingly new. His eyes narrowed. Earth's technology wasn't there yet. He leaned forward closer to the screen, his fingers clenched at his sides. His mind raced through the possibilities. Then the identification beacon flashed. Earth military codes. Voss froze. "It's broadcasting our codes, but it can't be—" His voice trailed off as he leaned in closer. "Where the hell did it come from?" "Sir," Maros spoke again, his voice trembling slightly. "It's been there for at least 30 minutes, and it just appeared out of nowhere. No jump, no signature, nothing." For a moment, the room held its breath. The silent exchange between the officers reflected the deep concern gnawing at the back of Voss's mind. The war with the Meridian Empire had ended only 6 months ago. They'd barely had time to lick their wounds, let alone deal with an unknown ship of this magnitude. "I want a direct feed to Admiral Jax now," Voss ordered, his voice sharp, the weight of command evident. The crew sprang into action, tapping commands into their consoles. The seconds felt like hours. As the feed came through, Admiral Jax's face appeared, his brows drawn tight in concentration. "Voss, what do you have?" "A ship, Admiral. Bigger than anything we've built. But the codes," Jax's voice cut through. "Don't waste time. We've seen this before, freak occurrences. Check the sensors again. I'll call you when I know more. We're not jumping to conclusions just yet." He turned away, his image flickering, his words unintelligible as his connection cut out. Voss stood motionless for a heartbeat before shaking his head. Something about this felt wrong. Too wrong. He took a deep breath, staring once more at the laser plasma display. "Get me a full scan of the object. I want every angle," he said coldly, before turning to Lieutenant Maros. "And try hailing them." Maros nodded and began typing furiously. The whir of commands sounded in the background, a hum of energy as the station's systems powered up to full capacity. Moments later, the harsh static of a failed signal filled the room, drowning out the quiet buzz of tense anticipation. "Nothing, sir," Maros reported. "Multiple frequencies, standard protocols. All we get is static." Voss's eyes narrowed. "Play it again. Filter out the high frequencies," he ordered, his gaze fixed on the screens. Maros complied, and the familiar white noise washed over them again. The crew's attention sharpened. Then, through the static, it came. A rhythmic beeping, a pattern, slow, methodical, like a pulse in the void. It was an old Earth distress signal, one long thought obsolete. Voss's pulse quickened, but something else underlined it, something that made his blood run cold. A date stamp, a time stamp that should not exist. "Play it again, filter it down, slow it." Voss's voice was steady, but it wasn't hard to notice the tension creeping into his tone. The beep slowed, the frequency shifted, and there it was. An unmistakable message buried within the noise. The date on the distress signal was from 300 years in the future. "What the hell are we dealing with?" Voss muttered under his breath. Before he could process this further, another alert blared through the command center, signaling the unknown ship's sudden movement. The display showed the object changing position, almost effortlessly, shifting through space with a fluidity that made no sense for a ship of its size. "Sir," Maros said, his voice filled with awe, "it's regenerating. The damage. It's repairing itself. It's like the ship is alive." Voss's heart skipped a beat. His gaze hardened as he realized the ship's hull was not just massive. It was scarred, battle damage, some fresh, others ancient. What had this ship been through? And why was it broadcasting Earth's codes? "We need to know everything about this ship now. Get me Admiral Jax again, and prepare the fleet," Voss commanded, his voice a low growl of determination. He turned back to the team. "I don't care what it takes. We're going after this." As the command center buzzed with activity, Voss's mind raced with the realization that whatever they were about to face, it was going to challenge everything Earth's military had come to know. This ship, this Elderstar, shouldn't exist. But it did, and it was unstoppable. The moment Voss's orders were issued, the command center buzzed into action. The urgency in the air was thick. Fingers flew across consoles, and heads-up displays flickered to life in a cascade of data, lighting the room in blue hues. Voss remained standing, his gaze fixed on the laser plasma display that showed the massive silhouette of the unknown ship, a ship that shouldn't exist. He gritted his teeth. Every calculation, every piece of data was pointing in the same direction. This was no ordinary encounter. This was something far beyond anything they had ever encountered. "Commander," Maros's voice cut through the murmur of the room. His voice was tighter than usual, his hands shaking as they hovered over the console. "The ship. It's moving again. It's—" His words faltered. "It's not just a ship, sir." Voss moved forward, his boots thudding against the metal floor with purpose. His gaze locked onto the screen where the dark silhouette was now shifting, the eerie form gliding effortlessly through space. The sheer size of it made his chest tighten, the ship's smooth curves illuminated only by the stars behind it, like a predator circling its prey. "What do you mean by that, Lieutenant?" Voss asked, his voice calm, but there was a hardness to it, a readiness to understand the depth of the situation. Maros didn't need to answer. The display told the story. The ship wasn't just stationary, it was changing shape. The hull was undulating, almost organic, as if it were adapting to its environment, regenerating damaged sections in real time. Impossible, Voss thought. There was no way a ship could behave this way, not with human technology. The ship's hull shimmered slightly under the light, but the changes were so subtle that at first it was impossible to pinpoint exactly what was happening. Still, the impact of the ship's presence was clear. "Get me the analysis team," Voss barked, the sharpness of his voice filling the room. "We need to understand everything about this thing, now." As the analysis team scrambled to confirm data points, Voss could feel the weight of the unknown pressing against him. This ship, this Elderstar, was not just a technological anomaly. It was a challenge to everything they had been taught about space warfare. It shouldn't be possible, but there it was, broadcasting Earth's military codes and behaving like something alive. His mind reeled. A year ago, Earth had been struggling just to keep up with the advances of the Meridian Empire. And now, this, an artifact from the future, or worse, an unseen force mocking humanity's progress. The questions multiplied like viruses in his mind. Who built this? How? Why? The tense air in the command center was thick with anticipation, and every moment that passed felt like an eternity. Suddenly, the voice of Lieutenant Zorik Maros snapped Voss back into the present. "Sir," Zorik's voice was hushed, almost in disbelief. "The ship is responding to our frequencies. It's not exactly hailing us, but it's like it knows we're here." Voss's spine straightened. "Are we getting a message?" "No, Commander. Not exactly. It's like a code, a series of pulses, layered in a way we can't quite decode yet," Maros replied. "It's communicating with us, directly, without words." Voss turned slowly, his mind whirling. This wasn't a random encounter. This wasn't just a ship. It was a puzzle, an intelligent one. He stepped away from the plasma display, his boots making a sharp clack against the hard floor as he turned toward his team. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered, each syllable weightier than the last. "We're going in." The officers around him sprang into action. The station hummed with the sound of readiness, and the tightness in Voss's chest remained, a constant pressing reminder of what was at stake. Hours passed as the fleet readied for the unknown. The Elderstar, a ship designed to face challenges far beyond the ordinary, was their only hope. But Voss knew that the situation was precarious. They couldn't afford mistakes. No one could anticipate what might happen next. Once the fleet had assembled, Voss gave the order, and the ships, massive and intimidating, shifted into formation, following the path Voss had laid out with the precision of a well-drilled military unit. They were heading directly toward the unknown vessel. His mind raced with tactical analysis, the weight of their decisions pressing on him. This wasn't just a recon mission, he thought. This was a test that would define Earth's future. Voss's hands gripped the arms of his chair as the ship's engines flared to life, the low vibration humming through his body. He could feel the subtle pull of acceleration as the fleet closed the gap between themselves and the alien ship, their forward momentum growing with each passing second. The darkness of space stretched out ahead, broken only by the gleaming points of distant stars. The cold weight of uncertainty hung in the air, thick and suffocating. "Commander," Maros's voice broke through the stillness. "We're being scanned." "The Elderstar. It's reading us." Voss's gaze shifted to the heads-up display, which flickered to life with incoming data streams. Every number, every line of code, every shift in sensor readings painted a picture that was too alien for him to fully understand. The Elderstar wasn't just analyzing them. It was testing them. Voss's brow furrowed. "Bring us into range. Prepare for anything," he ordered. "We're not just visitors here." As the distance between them and the unknown ship closed, the entire fleet dropped into radio silence. The hum of the engines, though subtle, became a constant presence, pulsing through the deck. Voss could feel the intensity of the moment in his bones, the weight of every decision made up until this point. Every tactical maneuver had led them to this point of no return. "Commander," Maros's voice cut through again, this time tinged with apprehension. "They've activated something. It's like a beacon, but the energy signature is wrong." Voss stood, his eyes narrowing as he processed the information. The ship's readings flickered, and for a split second a pattern seemed to emerge, something they hadn't detected before. The Elderstar was not just an alien presence, it was an enigma. The more Voss stared at the data, the more he felt the implications of what was unfolding. This wasn't just a technological challenge. This was something far more complex, a mystery, a threat, and perhaps a promise. Whatever this ship was, it was both a warning and a beacon. "Get me the fleet's tactical readiness," Voss barked, his voice steady despite the growing storm in his mind. "Prepare to launch." The room fell silent as the screens flickered and pulsed with the changing data. But Voss couldn't shake the growing sense of foreboding. The ship, the Elderstar, the code that it emitted, it was all tied together, a riddle he had to solve. And every answer raised more questions. He could feel it, the pulse of something much greater than just a simple battle. "Prepare for first contact, Lieutenant," Voss said, his eyes never leaving the display. "I want to know who or what we're really dealing with." The tension in the room was electric, as if the very fabric of the universe was holding its breath. The Elderstar was moving, the ship's engines whispering against the weight of space as they cut through the black void. The fleet followed in tight formation, their ships like a swarm of distant stars, each radiating with a different intensity, all pointed toward the enigmatic presence at the edge of Earth's defense zone. Commander Voss stood at the helm, his posture rigid, his mind running through every possible scenario. The air in the command center was thick with a sense of dread, each officer working in hushed silence as the ship closed the distance between itself and the unknown vessel. The low vibrations of the ship's systems were the only sound that broke the silence. Voss felt the thrum in his chest, his heartbeat syncing with the rhythm of the ship's powerful engines, each beat echoing the weight of the decisions ahead. "Commander," Lieutenant Maros's voice broke through the stillness, laced with urgency. "We're within range of their communication systems. The ship's emitting a signal, but it's not human." Voss didn't need to ask for more details. He could see the readings on the laser plasma display flickering as the signal's data scrolled across the screen. The patterns didn't match any known Earth or Meridian military codes. Instead, the signal was organic, almost alive, pulsing with frequency like a heartbeat. It was a pattern, a code, a language. "Is it responding to our transmissions?" Voss asked, his voice even but thick with the pressure of the unknown. Maros's hands were moving quickly across his console. "It's sending something back, sir, but it's shifting, like it's learning from our attempts." Voss could feel the weight of it. They weren't just confronting an alien vessel. They were engaging in a conversation with something capable of changing, evolving, responding in ways they didn't fully understand. The fear of the unknown started to claw at him, but he buried it quickly. Now wasn't the time. "We need more data," Voss muttered, his eyes narrowing. "If it's learning from us, then we'll have to stay one step ahead." The orders were simple, but they carried the weight of everything Earth had worked toward: survival. Voss turned to his tactical officer, Sergeant Kalen Dorr. "Get the fleet in position. I want every ship to synchronize its sensors with Elderstar. No mistakes." Dorr nodded, his voice steady, but the tension in his eyes was unmistakable. "Understood, Commander." "Maros, I want you to send a controlled burst to their communication network. Start slow, no heavy interference," Voss added, his focus never wavering from the screens in front of him. "If we push too hard, we might provoke it." Maros hesitated for only a moment before responding. "Aye, sir." As the crew moved into position, Voss's eyes never left the laser plasma display. He could feel the ship getting closer to the mysterious vessel. It had taken all their might to break away from the Galactic Council's restrictions, but now, in the cold, vast expanse of space, Earth's fate rested on the unknown. The Elderstar was their weapon, their answer to everything the universe had thrown at them, but that same weapon had its own set of secrets, and those secrets had yet to be unlocked. Voss could feel it deep in his gut, like a growing knot. The Elderstar wasn't just a ship. It was a part of something greater, something beyond human comprehension. A quiet beeping cut through the command center, drawing Voss's attention back to Maros. The signal had shifted again, the frequency modulating at an increasing rate. It wasn't just responding now, it was speaking. The ship was becoming something more than just a machine. It was becoming aware. "Commander," Maros said, his voice strained. It's reading us. The pattern, it's mimicking our transmissions." A shiver ran down Voss's spine. The ship wasn't just interacting, it was learning, adapting. It was as if they had opened the floodgates of communication, and now they were facing something that could evolve in real time, adapting faster than they could react. "We're not dealing with a ship," Voss muttered. "This is something else." A sudden flicker of light danced across the heads-up display, catching his attention. The massive vessel, still barely visible on the screen, shifted again. This time, it wasn't just moving, it was changing. Voss leaned in, narrowing his eyes. The hull of the ship, once solid, now appeared to be warping, reshaping itself. Armor plates retracted and shifted, revealing deep, shadowed crevices that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. "Report!" Voss barked, stepping closer to the display. The words were slow to arrive, as if the crew itself were still processing the new developments. Maros's voice came in a whisper. It's self-repairing. Whatever we're seeing, it's not technology as we know it." Voss took a sharp breath, his mind racing. The ship's self-repairing capabilities weren't just beyond human tech, they were beyond anything Earth had even theorized. His eyes flicked to the rest of the crew, watching their faces reflect the same uncertainty, the same growing unease. "Can we contact it?" Voss asked, his voice now quiet but laced with a growing sense of urgency. Maros didn't even look up as his fingers danced across the console. "We've tried all frequencies. There's no direct response. But it's sending something back. Some sort of encoded message." Voss clenched his fists at his sides. His jaw was set, the sharp edge of determination cutting through the growing storm of questions in his mind. If this ship was sending messages, then it was making a choice to communicate. And that meant Earth wasn't facing just an alien force, it was facing something that was deliberately engaging, pushing them into a corner with no way out. "We're going to board it," Voss declared, his voice slicing through the tension that had built up in the room. The decision was made, and there was no turning back now. The command center erupted into activity as the crew scrambled to make preparations. The atmosphere felt dense, like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for what was to come. There was no time for second-guessing, no time for fear. Maros, his expression tight, turned to Voss. "Boarding a ship like that... Commander, we don't even know what's inside. It could be dangerous." Voss's gaze hardened, his resolve firm. "I didn't come this far to back down now." The tension in the room thickened as the words hung in the air. The Elderstar was humanity's last hope, but the ship was no longer just a symbol of power. It was a doorway to something greater, a force that could either save humanity or destroy it. And Commander Voss was determined to find out which. As the fleet prepared to launch their shuttle toward the enigmatic vessel, Voss allowed himself one last glance at the display. The unknown ship was no longer just a mystery. It was a challenge, a test of humanity's will to survive and adapt. But as the shuttle doors closed and the rumble of the engines ignited, the question that remained was, would humanity survive the encounter? The shuttle rocketed toward the unknown ship, its exterior tremoring as it cut through the blackness of space. Commander Voss, sitting at the helm, could feel the subtle shift of pressure, the steady force of acceleration pressing him back into his seat. The interior lights flickered in rhythm with the pulsing vibrations of the ship. His palms were slick on the control panels, and though his posture remained stiff, a deep coil of anxiety wound tight in his chest. "Commander, we're approaching!" Lieutenant Zorik Maros's voice crackled through his earpiece, the tension in it unmistakable. "We've got minimal response from their hull. It's active. Sensors show signs of activity on board." Voss nodded, his jaw clenched tight. "Keep us steady. No surprises, Zorik." The dark outline of the alien ship loomed ahead, its surface now less alien and more alive. It shimmered, a ghostly glow radiating from the cracks in its surface, like some ancient beast awakening after centuries of slumber. The ship's hull was almost liquid in its transformation, plates of the ship shifting, growing, retracting. Every time Voss thought he understood it, it changed. He couldn't wrap his mind around it. Adaptive wasn't even a strong enough word for what this ship was doing. As the shuttle moved closer, Voss took a slow breath. The ship's hull, previously a solid mass, now felt like a sprawling organism. He could feel the weight of its gaze, as though the ship was studying them, scrutinizing every movement, every shift in their trajectory. It was no longer a question of if they could board. It was a question of how they would get out alive. The shuttle's engines fired softly as it aligned itself with the docking bay on the Elderstar's side. "Commence docking sequence," Voss ordered, his voice betraying none of the tension that gripped him. Maros was already securing the shuttle's final position, adjusting the angle as the large alien doors began to open, revealing an interior lit by soft blue lights that glowed eerily from within. The air around them felt colder, more sterile than the usual warmth of the shuttle. The strange silence within the docking bay was unnerving. No alarms, no warnings, just a deep, vibrating stillness. As the shuttle doors hissed open, the scent of cold metal and something else, something faintly organic, rolled over them. The walls surrounding them shimmered with the faintest glow, the space pulsating with an energy that was completely foreign. Voss could feel it in his bones, a subtle vibration, like the deep hum of a sleeping giant stirring. "Stay sharp," Voss said, his voice low, like a whisper meant only for his team. His hand rested on the control panel, fingers itching for something to do, but he kept them still. "Don't move too quickly. Watch the walls." The team disembarked, the pressure of the moment making his heart beat louder in his ears. The sound of their boots against the smooth floor felt strangely muted, as though the ship itself absorbed every step. They moved forward slowly, the air thick with the unknown. The heads-up displays on their helmets were filled with rapidly shifting data. The walls around them weren't static. They shimmered, pulsed with a quiet, rhythmic glow that made the ship feel alive. Each step forward was an unsettling dance between caution and resolve. Voss kept his eyes trained on the dark corridor ahead, illuminated only by the dim glow of the walls. "Sir?" Sergeant Kalen Dorr's voice broke through the silence. His tone was measured, but the tightness in his words betrayed his unease. "These readings, these walls, they're alive. The energy signatures are off the charts." Voss didn't look at him. He was already several steps ahead, moving further down the corridor. "We've been expecting this. Focus on the mission, Sergeant." The air felt colder as they continued deeper into the ship, and despite the ambient warmth from their suits, Voss couldn't shake the discomfort crawling along his spine. The corridor seemed to stretch on, its edges bending ever so slightly, the design of the ship blurring and shifting the further they ventured inside. The sense of motion was subtle, but unyielding, like the walls were closing in or adapting as they moved. It was an unnerving sensation, as if they were being guided somewhere, pushed toward something they weren't meant to find. The team came to a halt at a set of doors. Unlike anything Earth had constructed, these doors weren't mechanical. They were biological, a membrane of sorts, slick and breathing, glowing in response to their proximity. The tension in Voss's chest grew tighter. "Scan it," he ordered. Kalen's scanner blinked to life, but it wasn't just the display lighting up. The door itself seemed to respond. The surface rippled, as though the ship was alive, inspecting the intruders. Slowly, deliberately, the door shifted open, revealing an inner sanctum that resembled a control room, though no control panels or screens were visible. Instead, the walls were smooth, alive with soft pulses of light, and an eerie, rhythmic sound filled the space, like the beating of a distant heart. Voss stepped forward, his boots echoing softly as he crossed the threshold, the rest of the team falling in behind him. "Take up positions," he murmured. "We're not here to admire the architecture." The chamber stretched out before them, filled with displays, not of data, but of strange shapes and patterns that Voss couldn't quite comprehend. They danced across the walls, continuously shifting, changing in ways that didn't obey the normal rules of physics. The longer he stared, the more the designs seemed to take on meaning, like a story unfolding, telling of wars fought in a time long past. An unsettling presence seemed to grow stronger with each passing second. The atmosphere in the room grew heavy, each breath they took feeling more labored. Voss's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of data in his mind. The ship wasn't just a weapon. It wasn't just a ship. It was something far more ancient and dangerous than anything they had encountered before. This was the Elderstar's legacy, not a ship designed to fight, but something far more insidious, far more personal. "Sir," Maros's voice was tight with confusion and fear. It's like the ship is alive. The walls. They're reacting to us." Voss's eyes flickered over the strange designs, the faint but insistent sense of being watched gnawing at him. The reality of what they were facing was settling in, piece by piece. There was no easy way to comprehend this ship's true nature, its purpose, its existence, but one thing was clear. It was an artifact of war, not just a weapon. It had a purpose. "We need to keep moving," Voss said. His voice was calm, but it carried an urgency that was difficult to ignore. "We're on a timer." Just as he finished speaking, a low sound reverberated through the ship, a deep, ominous hum that seemed to echo from the walls themselves. The room darkened for a moment, and then the lights flared back to life, brighter than before. Something had changed. Voss could feel it, the air now charged with a new intensity. "We've got company," Voss muttered under his breath. Suddenly the walls shifted again. Voss snapped his head to the side, eyes narrowing as strange figures began to materialize in the room. They weren't solid at first, flickering like holograms, but then they coalesced, becoming more real, more distinct. A series of shapes, alien yet distinctly human in their outline. The mission had just escalated. Voss's heart pounded in his chest as he took a step forward, his eyes never leaving the figures. They weren't hostile, at least not yet, but they were an undeniable sign that the ship, the Elderstar, had much more in store for them than anyone had anticipated. "Stay alert," Voss said quietly. The figures in front of Voss weren't enemies. They were something entirely different. Human-like, but unmistakably alien, their outlines flickered with an ethereal glow, like shadows trying to break free from the constraints of the world they existed in. Voss's eyes narrowed, the tension in his chest growing as he realized that these beings weren't merely a product of the ship's technology. They were the Elderstar's true crew. "Commander," Maros whispered, his voice tinged with awe. "What are they?" Voss stood motionless, studying them. The beings didn't speak, but their presence was undeniable, powerful. It was clear they had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, perhaps guided by the same force that now held humanity in its grasp. It felt like an ancient intelligence, older than anything Earth could comprehend, but it wasn't hostile. Instead, it seemed waiting. One of the beings stepped forward, its movements fluid, its form constantly shifting between human and something more alien. A sense of recognition passed through Voss, a silent understanding that this was not an encounter of war. It was an invitation, a call to humanity, one that demanded more than just survival. "You came," the being's voice echoed, though there were no words, only thoughts transmitted directly into Voss's mind. The communication was so direct, so intimate, that he felt his own breath freeze in his chest. "You were expected." Voss didn't flinch. He had expected something like this, something beyond the reach of the known universe. The reality of the Elderstar wasn't just its power, it was its message. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, not through overwhelming force, but through the strength to stand, to adapt, and to evolve. Humanity wasn't just another species vying for power. It had a unique ability to rise when all seemed lost, to create something from nothing, to forge its own future when given the chance. "Expected?" Voss echoed, his voice strong despite the weight of the revelation. "By whom?" The being tilted its head, a ripple passing through its form as if it were weighing the words before answering. "By all who came before you, all who understood what you are becoming. You have shown your capacity for change, your resolve. You are the next step." Voss's heart skipped a beat as the weight of those words settled on him. The next step. He had known the Elderstar was humanity's answer to the galaxy, but this, the idea that they had crossed a threshold not just of survival, but of purpose, was something different. The truth of their struggle, of their fight to be more than what they were, had led them here. "We're not just survivors," Voss murmured, his voice low. The realization hit him like a wave crashing against the shore, pulling him deeper. "We are the future." The being before him nodded, its glowing eyes not just seeing him, but understanding him. It reached out, its hand hovering above a console embedded into the ship's wall. The air around it shifted, like a ripple across the surface of still water, and suddenly, the laser plasma display flared to life. Humanity's future, its potential, was now laid bare in front of him. The display flickered, showing not just the vastness of space, but the countless possibilities that stretched out before them. New worlds, new technologies, new allies, and enemies. And at the center of it all, the Elderstar was not just a ship. It was a symbol, a living testament to the idea that humanity was no longer just struggling to exist. They were ready to shape the stars themselves. Voss's mind raced. He thought of the war, of the scar, of everything that had led him here. And as the ship's display shifted again, showing the destruction wrought by the swarm and other alien invaders, he saw it. Humanity's fight was just beginning, but now they had the tools, the knowledge, and the will to fight back, to survive, and to adapt faster than any other species. "This is what you wanted from us?" Voss asked, his voice tight, full of the weight of understanding. "To fight? To conquer?" The being's form shimmered. "Not to conquer, Commander, to evolve. You are no longer simply reacting to the threats of others. You are creating a new future, one where you guide the course of history." Voss felt a surge of emotion, pride, awe, and fear. He knew what this meant. Humanity was no longer just a fledgling species on the edge of the galaxy, struggling to keep pace with older civilizations. They had evolved. They had become something more, and now they were responsible for the future of the galaxy. "We're ready," Voss said, his voice firmer now, the uncertainty fading from his words. "We can handle this." The being nodded once more, its form rippling like liquid light. "You have already begun. But your journey is not just about power. It is about understanding. You must learn from all who have come before you, and you must build upon their wisdom, not through violence, but through unity. And the first step is understanding the Elderstar." As the being finished speaking, the display shifted once more, showing images of different cultures, humanity's first encounters with alien species, the formation of new alliances, the blending of human ingenuity with alien technology. It was a story of growth, of adaptation, of a species no longer content to stand at the mercy of others. Voss turned to his crew, each one staring at the display, their faces a mix of disbelief and awe. They had fought for this moment, but now it was clear that the true battle lay ahead, not just to protect Earth, but to protect the future of every species in the galaxy. "We won't just survive," Voss said, his voice resonating in the quiet room, every word deliberate, every word a promise. "We'll make sure the galaxy knows what humanity is capable of." Kalen Dorr, standing behind him, finally spoke up, his voice a quiet reflection of Voss's own thoughts. "We're not just the next step, Commander. We're the beginning of something new." Voss turned to look at the crew, their eyes filled with a mix of wonder and determination. They weren't just soldiers anymore. They were the architects of a new future. "The war is over," Voss said, his voice unwavering. "But our journey is just beginning." As he spoke, the Elderstar seemed to pulse in response, its walls alive with energy, its systems humming as they adapted to the new path humanity had chosen. The stars beyond the ship's viewports weren't just distant lights. They were now the destination of a species that had earned its place among them. No longer fighting for survival, humanity had begun to shape its own future. The galaxy had its answer. Humanity wasn't just a species that existed. It was a force, a presence that could no longer be ignored. And as the Elderstar surged forward, humanity surged with it, unshackled, unstoppable, and ready for what lay ahead. The stars would soon know what it meant to stand in the path of humanity,